Welcome to Inside Joke, the podcast that takes a serious look at a funny business. My name is Benjamin Leis, and I'm the managing director and co-founder of Comic Cure. At Comic Cure, we teach, produce, and book live comedy. Now entering our 5th year in business, we've worked with hundreds of comedians and hundreds of nonprofit organizations to unite communities with laughter and engage audiences in important causes. The goal of this podcast is to help aspiring comedians by passing on our knowledge of the industry and creating a forum for dialogue. We'll have different members of the industry as guests on the show, telling their stories and providing advice. We welcome all your feedback, questions, and comments so that we can provide a rich discussion of all the ins and outs and nuances of the comedy business. Lastly, please make sure to subscribe and share so that we can gain listeners, monetize this podcast, and justify to our loved ones why we should continue to do this. Today's guest is none other than Comic Cure co-founder and my brother, Richy Leis. So this being the first episode of Inside Joke, I kind of wanted to talk to you about the fundamentals that you preach a lot about and that we talk about in our classes to be a successful comedian, which are funny, professional, and supportive. Those three kind of tenets.
Yeah, so it's not just in stand-up, but that's in life, too. Right? To be successful, you need to be funny, professional, and supportive. There's some people who aren't funny. They're just professional and supportive, and they do well as well. But
So before we go into this topic, I just wanted audiences to hear a little bit about your background and know where you're coming from. So tell us more about your history, your comedic journey.
I've been doing stand-up for, it's over 18 years. I started when I was 22, 23 years old. And in Philadelphia, it was really tough for about 4 years. And then I moved down to Florida, which I was able to start getting up every single night. And I started producing very quickly after I started doing stand-up because the opportunities are harder to get when you're a newer comedian. Actually, opportunities don't change. It still is difficult to get opportunities later in comedy, but when you're a younger comedian, you need more practice. So moved down here to Florida and started getting up every single night.
So you moved down to Florida. Where did you move to exactly?
To Boca Raton.
So South Florida.
Southeast Florida.
So what kind of were the markets and the rooms that you were working out in?
So it was just cafes, bars, karaoke nights. For a while down here, we would go, there was a bunch of us we had a PA system, a sound system, and we would drive around to find busy bars that didn't have entertainment or music or anything that was really loud. And we would just walk in and say, hey, would you like a free comedy show? And then we would get up. And sometimes it was awful. Sometimes it was nice. But a lot of times it was awful because no one wanted to listen to stand-up. So we would get up there on stage and just do our best to get people's attention. Sometimes we would throw up the vulgar guys. Sometimes we would put up the clean people first, just to see how it would go.
And a lot of times you weren't asked back.
Yeah, a lot of times we weren't asked back. But sometimes people were like, oh, great, free entertainment, right. Which, we don't preach about now because there's a value to everything, especially the time and effort you put into it. And I learned that very young in comedy as I started producing shows very close to when I started doing stand-up because that allowed me the opportunities. So I started learning and making money at the same time. And a couple years in, started doing it at this place in Philly called Milk Boy in Ardmore, Pennsylvania, that now has 3 different locations and does comedy, I believe, at all 3 locations separately.
When you say South Florida, so we're talking about rooms from South Miami-Dade or Miami up to like West Palm or Jupiter. That is kind of South Florida.
Yeah, I mean that's when I started, but really it's all over Florida has rooms. I mean even like Tallahassee and Gainesville have like 1 or 2 rooms that are like cafe style that amateurs can get up on. They have maybe 1 or 2 open mics a month. And back then the Panhandle had like 1 or 2 open mics and a Comedy Zone, and there was like a Giggles and I can't remember what the others. There was a bunch of Grouchos and Bonkers, and then there's the Lakeland. What are they? Winter Circle had a run, and Jackie Knight. So you could go all over Florida and get up as an amateur.
In one night here in South Florida, you could probably get up a few times in one night.
Yeah, I think Fridays. Yeah, there's a Dr. Kerry, local open mic comedian, has a great list of open mics. And Lisa Correa used to do that a lot. LisaCorrea.com for the scene down here, which is very strong. In Orlando, I think, might have a stronger scene than Southeast Florida now.
Yeah, I mean, Orlando's really strong, and I think Orlando's really strong because
they support each other.
They are very supportive of each other, and they also have veterans of comedy that have stayed in the market who are kind of passing on the knowledge to the next generation. I think that's one thing that might be missing here. You came up with a lot of great comedians who have all gone on to New York and LA. Who are some of the people that you...
Yeah, I would say that from when I was down here, there's Al Jackson, who is Daily Blast Live in, is it Dallas? I think it's Dallas. It's a big morning talk show. And then besides all the comedy accomplishments, he's got a Comedy Central. He was just on the Ari Shaffir one, or the Roy Wood Jr. Comedy Central one.
Right.
And then there's Forrest Shaw, who's a touring headliner, who has 2 spots on Conan, 1 spot on Conan, and is the Jim Jeffries writer and producer. Mm-hmm. And then who else? J.C. Carias, but he's more from Tallahassee. Well, he's from Miami. He's doing well. He's on Disney right now. Orlando Leyba has an 2 HBO specials. Mm-hmm. And Nary Signs, but he's still here.
Doing the cruises.
Yeah, Nary's doing cruises. Oni Perez just moved out to L.A., and he's already doing great. He was just on Kurt Braunhaller's show, Hot Tub Time Machine, with Kristen Shaw.
So yeah, there was a good group of you guys down here.
Yeah, there was a lot of...
And Lisa was up in New York. She's all over the place. A lot of great... Wendy Starling's in New York. Yep.
Will Watkins. Mm-hmm. Lucas is in New York.
Pat
Schroeder's in New York. Matt Ziegen's in Cocoa Beach at Ron John. Mm-hmm. There's Sean Began. He's somewhere. Sean Began's not around, but he just did a tour around Florida and is doing another one.
So you realized early on also that you could produce shows, you could host shows, and that would give you much more opportunities to perform and more length to perform.
Yeah, I was just talking to a buddy of mine here down here, and I said that, Dave Williamson is on the Burt Kreischer tour right now. Mm-hmm. That's huge. Yeah, good call, Sean. And Dave Williamson did Nickelodeon down here and South Beach Comedy Festival. And not only do you make a couple dollars if you produce well, you allow yourself whatever time you want to work on. So at most mics, you're told this is the light, whether it's 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. But if you want to work on 25 minutes, then you allot yourself 25 minutes in the show, and you do 25 minutes. If it's your show, you do what you want.
Talk a little bit about one of the longest running open mics in Florida, certainly South Florida, that you really helped to build.
If not anywhere. There's a couple of mics that run really long. San Francisco has the Brainwash, which was, I know that when they celebrated 16 years at least, and that was Tony Sparks, I think his name is, great comic, and it's still going on. It's a laundromat restaurant open mic, and the one down here was the Funky Buddha open mic, and it's been through 3 owners since we did it, and is no longer the Funky Buddha open mic. It's the Mad Robot Brewery. And when we started that, it sat 10, 15 people. And actually, Renda Writer, a local poet, started that, who started so many open mics. Mm-hmm. And then...
Renda's a local legend who's on a world tour.
World tour. It's been a nonstop world tour.
Just doing artwork.
And he started it, got it going. I would go to him and just say, hey, can I open up for you? Because I wanted to practice hosting. And then when the mics changed, the venues changed hands, the owners changed hands, so did the mic. And I took it over from Renda and continued with opening every show with Renda's slogan, support the scene or there'll be no scene to support, which was to spend, instead of stopping at CVS or the gas station on your way to the open mic, save that $3 to $5 on your Red Bull and buy something at the venue, so that venue stays open, because so many venues close down. A lot of places bring in comedy last minute and try to boost their marketing, where really you should use comedy from the get-go to bring in marketing, to bring in guests.
Yeah.
Because you can use comedy to publicly promote in other medias.
Usually the comedy night comes in, the place shutters it's like a telltale sign that a place is going out of business.
Yeah, because you have a couple
like a
crappy
last
comedy
resort.
shows, no one shows up. Mm-hmm. And they pay the last couple dollars out of their bank to the comedians, and sometimes that money doesn't even happen. Sometimes that check does not go through.
That'll be a whole nother episode on talking about how to run a successful open mic.
Yeah. So that open mic is still running, and it's got to be 15 years. Mm-hmm. I left here about 8 years ago, and I ran it for 8 years. So we would average. We went through several different layers of marketing to establish that open mic, from getting from unpaid customers to paid customers, and actually making profit for the venue, rather than the open mic that was just young high school hippies who just wanted to use the space and was a detraction from anyone who wanted to spend money and actually enjoy a good beer.
And it was a Wednesday night, so it's not a typical Thursday, Friday, Saturday where your sales are high.
And there is no consistent anything in Boca at that time,
right.
Or right now, really. There's no weekly something that everyone can go to every week besides like trivia at Dubliner or any of the local bars.
Right.
I mean, most of the breweries, to actually perform. And the Mad Robot that's currently there, the venue is built up around the stage. The stage is the main focus point, because that's what they were using to build their beer. Their marketing was live entertainment, right? They had a big stage. People would come in, get their emails, try the beer, and that just kept on giving them the opportunity to put that money back into their microbrew, which then they bought out for millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah. Great success story.
Yeah, Funky Buddha. So we'd get like 300 people on a Wednesday night just cycling through from 8 o'clock till quarter to 2 a.m. And now I'd say they probably have about 100 and 150 maybe. It's not the same that it was, but it's still fun. I mean, it used to be pretty crazy then. You couldn't even walk in sometimes. And for the comedy shows, we get 110 people per show.
And sometimes it is like that.
Yeah.
Especially around the holidays when everyone's back in town.
Yeah,
Places jammed.
winter.
But so talk about leading up to your move to Los Angeles.
It was always in my head that to wait until I felt I was good enough to move to LA or New York, because I wanted to be the best that I could be. And so I waited, and then I worked as hard as I could and saved up as much money as I could to move to Los Angeles, which came quicker because my girlfriend at the time moved out before I got a job. And she said, come on, move out. So what I had as a 2-year plan to save money quickly turned into a 6-month plan. Mm-hmm. Saved enough money to send my car, and worked everywhere that I could and sold everything that I could, including every DVD in my bookshelf. And then I moved to LA and found out quickly that if you can live in New York or LA and develop as a stand-up comic, that you have more opportunity to make more money and get on TV and in movies, because that's where that stuff is made. And people see potential. That's what the agents and stuff are looking on. Besides, is this person already famous? There's the potential of them being famous and them being original, and then there's the people who are famous and make it original for them. When I say make it original, I mean content. And that's really when you're developing. I mean, I'm almost 20 years in, and I have to readjust what's going on and show that I'm also developing, that I'm constantly moving forward. I had a morning job. I'm sleeping on floors from Craigslist, where I'm on an online job, and I would do that till 3 o'clock. And open mics start from 1 p.m., 2 p.m., and so you go around to as many open mics as you can. And then I quickly realized that that's not the way to do it, that you pick the shows that with the biggest names and go and hang out there. And now, after years of being there, I can tell you, you can move to LA and not even perform every night. Just go to the Comedy Store every night and you can end up becoming famous and making a lot of money and getting on TV just by being there and hanging out and making the acquaintances, because that's where everyone is. That's the hub of Hollywood and acting and comedy, is at the Comedy Store.
The store. They're all there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you happened to get a job in comedy.
Yeah. So I was hanging out with the crew from the Tallahassee crew, which was... we didn't mention Sean G is also a great headliner from
That's right. Sean
South
G.
Florida.
We just had him headline.
Who's written movies and all sorts of stuff. So I moved to L.A., and I was hanging out with J.C. Carias and Lisa Best and Andrew Duvall and Paul Lair, and they were like, "Oh, there's a comedy club that lets beginners get up, or new people, to LA get up, or anyone get up, really. There's a club that lets anyone get up." And I was like, that's crazy, because Laugh Factory, at that time, you would get in line 2 weeks before the open mic, and they choose the first 13 people. So, and you'd have to get up 5 o'clock. People get in line at 2 p.m. for 5 o'clock line, where they bring in the first people, and then you get signed up, and then you get to perform 3 minutes 2 weeks later. So that was the closest thing to an open mic, besides Potluck at the Comedy Store, which, sometimes 200 people show up to open mic.
That's crazy.
At the Comedy Store, which has made, some comedians very successful. The Tony Hinchcliffe and Brian Redband were younger comics, and they saw a spot, and they did the Kill Tony, which is a podcast, and they did it opposite time as the Comedy Store Potluck. So any comics which is everybody who couldn't get on the Potluck, would sign up to do their podcast. So you have a room full, you've got 80 comics. Yeah, you've got an audience, a built-in audience, and they want to hear dark, dirty crap, which is what their show is about. It's
Well, it's not crap.
No, dark, dirty stuff.
Content.
Yes, content. They fit in perfectly for what was going on. Mm-hmm. And it was a great place. The Comedy Store is a great place for comics to do it unhinged, whatever they want. So I auditioned at Flappers Comedy Club in Burbank. And when I moved to LA, so it was a couple months in, and I got booked on a show, their Uncle Clyde's Comedy Contest.
Right.
And I did my research. I looked up who the owner was, and I looked online, and I found out more history about the club. And when I went in for the show, I saw one of the owners sitting in the back, or not sitting in the room, standing in the back of the room, looking at what was going on in the audience and taking plates and stuff back and forth. So I knew she was busy and didn't want to be bothered, but I also wanted to let her know that I was appreciative of what's going on. And I went up and said hello, introduced myself, and said, "Nice to meet you. I'm a comedian. I'm on tonight's show. Thanks for having me." Went back in the green room and was talking to the headliners, who I became friendly with, Devin and Joel. Joel and Devin, great comedy duo, and individually very funny. I can't think of their last name. Devin Green and Joel. I'll think about it. Sorry, Joel. And then later on, they were talking to the owner, Barb Holiday, and I walked in, and they were like, "Oh, this is the guy who has the great room in Florida. He produces this great show and an open mic." And she goes, "Oh, you were really polite. Would you like to interview for the booking position here? We're in need of a booker." And I said, "Really?" And they were like, "Yeah, we haven't had a booker for 6 months." So I went in there. I started booking their small room, which was a 50-seater. And within 6 months to a year, I was producing all 50 shows there, which includes all the open mics, putting the hosts into those spots as a developmental role, and then training them on how to host an open mic, as well as communicating with the staff on how to really be the best staff for a comedy club, between the open mic and the rooms. Then we had 2 rooms at that location, a 200-seater and a 50-seater, and then another location 100 miles away or 70 miles away that was a 100-seater. So producing 50 shows a week and booking 10 to 12,000 comedic spots, ranging from anywhere from 3-minute spots to, hour-long headlining weekend spots in the main room.
So you're booking 10,000, 12,000 spots at Flappers.
Hosting a lot. I'm putting myself in roles as much as I can, but within reason.
And you're really helping the staff to understand how comedy works, how to monetize the room. Once you get these people in, how do you...
So it was similar to coming into the Funky Buddha.
How do you maximize your revenues?
Yeah, it was similar to starting with the Funky Buddha. I didn't get hired as the booker immediately. I was brought in as a consultant for the first year. So I had been working in the office at the Improvs and learned a lot from just listening to what was going on between Renee and Will and Ramon and everyone else there about what was going on and getting booked myself and with their marketing system. And I was in their marketing system as well. So I saw what they were using. They were using programs that cost money, but they were great programs. Mm-hmm. And Flappers didn't have the money to do that stuff. So we developed it around what we did have and what we could use. And then they had a lot of people that helped along the way. So, in the 4 years that we were there, they went from, I don't want to say numbers, but I'd say canceling 14 to 16 shows a week to then having, in the biggest week of us, I think it was 2,800 people in a week. So they were going from maybe 300 or 400 people in a week to 2,800 people by the end of 4 years.
At Flappers?
At Flappers.
And so, while you were there, that biggest week was at the Burbank Comedy Festival?
Yeah.
So talk real quickly about the Burbank Comedy Festival, because you were there, you helped start it.
Yeah, so I remember when I came in, one of the things that I started down here was the Boca Raton Comedy Festival, which was a quarterly festival, and it was to celebrate and showcase the local talent with 3-minute spots. And we would do 15-minute people per show, and we'd invite everyone that we could to see those comedians so we could get more gigs. And when I went to Burbank, I figured this is something that I'm pretty good at and that I have a lot of experience because I did it for years, that we should put on a festival that's very similar. A lot of festivals have different things, their competitions, this, that. And it's not necessarily the festival that I would have put together, but they do a really good job on bringing in, on being open to talent. They have everyone from newbies to veteran comedians, huge names. They bring all the agents and college reps and all sorts of stuff to do great panels every day.
And it becomes a talent showcase.
Yeah, it's a talent showcase. And when I was there for 3 years that I did it, just one of the people, Tiffany Hubert, was with the Game Show Network. She came to every single show, just about every single show, which is like 4 or 5 shows a day. Specifically just getting a ton of comedians to host Game Show Network shows. She was with the Game Show Network, and they just needed so many hosts. They're always doing new TV shows there with them that are coming in and out, so she was just pulling comics out. Tori, I can't remember her last name, is also a co-host on Daily Blast Live with Al Jackson, and she was found in that festival as well. She was a local actor, and she is amazing and very funny. And I remember when I introduced her from that show, a manager said, "Who was that woman?" And I said, "Oh, her name's Tori. Let me introduce you." And then I introduced him, and that was it. And now she's very famous.
While you're there, they're bringing in celebrity headliners. The talent pool from LA is pretty long. So what are some of the highlights of your time in LA? When I was there, the first night you hosted Dana Carvey's pilot for his television show.
I get a job at Flappers, and one of the people I meet in the first week is John Cleese from Monty Python.
Right.
And then I become friends with, and still am, Camilla Cleese, who is... Sorry, that was my pacemaker. John Cleese's daughter, very funny. So I become very good friends with the whole Wayans family.
Right.
Is from Damon to Damon Jr. to Shantae, who I just talked to this week. All the brothers, Marlon and everybody. This is a good story, is that Benjamin and I brought one of my nephews out, who's a screenwriter, and to spend a couple weeks in the summer with us. And we went to the grocery store right after picking him up from the airport, and we met Mike McShane, was at that supermarket that night, who is a Shakespearean actor who's from Prince of Thieves with Kevin Costner and Whose Line Is It Anyways? And I'm still very good friends with the guy. And he sat there and he talked to Max for like a half hour and right there in the supermarket. And he's now my supermarket buddy. We go shopping together.
So I'm just trying to wrap up your resume here. You leave Flappers. You come on with Comic Cure. We're about a year in at that point. We just celebrated 4-year anniversary. So up till today now, you are running, booking shows in L.A., performing in L.A., you're coming back and forth. You're traveling the country, touring, headlining.
And teaching, too.
Right.
So that's currently what's going on.
Okay.
Every day, just pursuing more bookings. Trying to get as many shows as possible for me and other people, booking other people as well. We book, can I mention some of the big organizations that we work with?
You can real quick.
Okay. Firefighter Cancer Support Network, Glendale Arts, Gilda's Club, Haven Hills. What are some of the other?
Miami-Dade County.
Miami-Dade County. We're working theaters up and down all over Florida.
University of Miami.
University of Miami.
Seminole Theater.
There you go.
Lots of different stuff. But I want to...
YWCA Gala, Painted Brain.
Yes. So now, yes, we've worked with about 250 nonprofits, about 2,500 comedians, mostly in South Florida and Los Angeles, and we've done some shows back home in Philly. So I want to talk about, getting back to the theme of the show, the fundamentals of being a successful comedian. Funny, professional, supportive. So let's talk about the funny. To you, what is funny? To me, funny and being a comedian is getting on stage in front of strangers and making them laugh. So what is funny to you?
Funny is something that makes me laugh. I can...
And I mean, and I'm talking about a stand-up comedy, professional stand-up comedy. So you being at the water cooler telling jokes to your coworkers, to me, that's not necessarily comedy. That's being very funny. But from a professional standpoint, from being able to have a career and take comedy seriously.
I mean, there's people who are not funny who work as comedians. It hurts me a lot when I see someone who's not funny working a lot. But then it also hurts me when someone who's hilarious is just an awful person and horrible to work with. When we were at Flappers, one of the good marriages was the fact that I wanted everyone to be funny, professional, and supportive to work with and not high maintenance. And they also did that. They're also good people who wanted to have not only quality shows, but quality people involved in the shows. And sometimes you find quality people who are not quality comedians yet, but you can see that they just need some developing and some modeling. Yeah, some dedicated time. And that's what we do with our classes, is really allow those people. I mean, we've got several great comics who are up and coming that take the comic classes. Marissa's doing great. And she applies everything that she's doing to getting up several times a week, but not getting up in crappy situations, which we talked about recently.
To me, also funny is being funny consistently, being funny at a pace, not getting up on stage and talking for 5 minutes and you getting 3 laughs.
Right. Yeah.
You know, having solid laughs per minute.
Yeah, which is weird because now, I mean, storytelling is so big right now, is that I'm listening. It drives me nuts because I want to laugh. I want constant jokes. Like, I watched Frasier and there's a joke every 10 seconds. That's what I want, is a laugh every 10 seconds. But there's sometimes now it's 2 or 3 minutes before a comic gets to a joke, even on Pandora or whatever that I'm listening to on YouTube. And it kills me. It drives me nuts because there's a lot of comics that are getting airtime that it's just not great jokes. And a lot of stage time that's not great jokes. Like stories that don't go anywhere, which is just not great.
Okay, so, of course, obviously, being funny and consistently funny is a fundamental to being a successful stand-up comedian. So how about the next tenet, funny professional? So what does professional mean when you hear that word?
Professional has so much, it's so weighted. So professional means being courteous to everyone involved in comedy, whether it's the audience, the staff, or the other comedians. But professional is also your approach. You have to approach people all day, every day to get gigs. You have to perform almost every night if you want to get more shows. And you have to ask for money. I got a gig today, and what I've learned from working with that booker is that every time they say, yes, you can have those dates, I say, how much does it pay? I've been working with them for 10 years, 15 years, and I still make sure, because there's times I show up that I didn't ask specifically, and all of a sudden it's different pay than I was going to get.
Yeah, you need to advocate for yourself and make sure you get it in writing too.
Yes.
Because it's, I didn't say that.
I have a week in Vegas coming up, the November 20th to the 24th. If you're in Las Vegas, come on out at the Delirious Comedy Club in the Downtown Grand. But the bookers switched. The booker is no longer there that I was working with. And professionally, a month before every event that I have, one of my things as a comedian, I have to double check. I have to reconfirm. So I wasn't hearing back from the booker, and I called another comic who also was working at the club and said, oh, yeah, there's a new booker who got in touch with him with the info. So I called up, and it turns out that one of my days is no longer open, or is open, that they have Pauly Shore coming in to do a special event. So I have one day off in the middle of it, but I'm still getting paid, which is the important thing, is that you make sure that you're still getting paid for those spots, and that you know what's going on, because there's so many comedians who show up for a gig, they go, yeah, I'll do the gig, and they show up, and they're not getting paid. And they're really mad that they're not getting paid. Mm-hmm. But if someone doesn't tell you that you're getting paid, that means you're not getting paid. And that's professional. And then following up and saying thank you. Casey Peruski, who works with us as a teacher and doing shows, he pretty much always sends an edible arrangement. Which edible arrangement sucks now because you have to go pick it up yourself. You can't get it delivered.
It delivers too. You just got to pay for it.
Yeah, but before they just included it. That's professional. And then supportive, which is the third thing.
Well, no, I want to stay on professional for a minute because you touched on it really quickly. But what does professional mean when it comes to other comedians? What does professional mean when it comes to the staff at a venue?
I mean, it sticks out in my head that comedians, especially headliners, who were in our venues that did not tip staff, who would eat and treat the staff poorly and not tip them, or, that reflects on the type of person that they are. It means that they're not treating the staff. They're not going to treat the audience the same way. They're not going to be nice to work with. And that's just those are like tips that you can see. Or when a comedian gets on stage and they immediately start talking crap about the venue. That's one of my least favorite things.
On the room and
I have friends who do that. I have friends who've been doing comedy forever. They still do that. And I'm like, that just drives me nuts.
Yeah, I mean, here's a venue that's trying to support comedy, and then the comedy comes in and
just tears it apart.
Tears it down.
I mean, it's also the same way. Like, I've been to venues. There was a venue in Fort Lauderdale, a wine place, and it's a busy, loud wine bar with people yelling at you the entire show. And I did a pretty good job, 45 minutes. And right during my closer, I go, okay, so I'll wrap it up here. And the bartender goes, thank God, loud enough for everyone to hear. And I just turned to him and I was like, I'm supporting your venue by being here and talking nicely. And he was a photographer and he had his photographs on the wall. And I was talking nicely about that. And I was just so pissed. And I was like, who the hell do you think you are?
Yeah.
What kind of business is that where the bartender, the main person who's working here, communicating with everybody, is publicly putting down the entertainment that the owner brought in? I was like, that's not good business. That's not good customer service. And right now, I'm going to say out loud, I'm never coming back here. And I've got a microphone, and I'm telling that to everyone in this room right now. And the little old lady got up and left and gave me a $5 tip as she's walking out. And she goes, here, sweetie. And then I turned and I gave it to the bartender, which I shouldn't have given it to the bartender. I should have just kept it, but I thought I was being a better man than giving him a tip.
Yeah. So professional in the sense of when it comes to the staff and the management, it's going in there, it's meeting and greeting everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to working tonight. It's
and don't order steak and lobster unless they tell you can order steak and lobster.
Oh, taking advantage of the free meals? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. We had comics who came in and got like $1,000 tab. And there's two things you learn there. Is one, your staff is screwing you over. You don't let that happen. If someone orders more than $100, staff should go to the management and say, hey, can I approve more food and drinks for these people? And then 2 is don't be the obnoxious comic. There was a comic in Miami who I don't think he does comedy anymore, who him and his friends went to go see a show at the Improv, then dipped in the green room just to introduce themselves to the headliner in the feature, and then went to the bar, ordered food and drink, and the bartender was like, are you guys comedians? And they were like, yeah.
But not on the show.
Right, so they put it on the headliners tab, and then they got banned.
And so also staying through the show.
Supporting
the other comedians.
We had a show last night, our Class Clowns graduation. I said, hey, it's an intimate venue. Stay inside. The more times you go in and out, the door opens and closes, and the more you walk around, it's distractions from the show. Be supportive. Stay there. You want everyone to watch you. And there was a couple comics last night that I was sitting behind. I stood behind because they were on their phones. Like, I literally walked behind them so that they would put that. There's 10 minutes left in the headliner set, and these 2 people are sitting there just texting people the entire time. Like, you really have to text someone right now for 10 minutes?
Yeah.
And they didn't stop the entire time.
Provide the courtesy that was given to you.
Yeah, to given to you, exactly.
So moving on to that third kind of fundamental, the supportiveness. And you kind of mentioned Renda's motto.
Right.
You got to support the scene,
and there'll be no scene to support.
Right.
And comics, they chew apart open mics. There's an open mic that is friendly to comedians, and then the comedians start coming in droves, like cockroaches, and destroy the mic. No one else comes because they're rude or they stand outside. I was just talking to a comedian yesterday, the day before, about how, I think it was Warren, that we were doing an open mic, and there's more people outside than there is inside. And it's just because the comics aren't even in. There's a comic who comes in, does a set, runs the light by 7 minutes, which is another person's set and a half, and then leaves and goes outside and just starts talking and then gets in his car and leaves. And that's just the worst. There's no support there. And I've never hired that person for work. I've never referred that person for work. And if anyone tries to hire them through me, I go, well, there's probably some other people that you'd rather work with. Which is, it goes a long way. Be presentable.
And referring for work. So if you're, this is...
The more work you refer, the more work you get.
Right, exactly. And so...
You'd think. I refer a ton of work and I don't get enough
exactly.
work.
So we'd face that as a production company. I'm not a comedian, but I provide a whole lot of opportunities for comedians. And I think, we've worked with hundreds, over thousands of comedians. And I think we've gotten 2 referrals from comedians.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the problem with just being a booker is that you miss those opportunities of being at every comedy show. Because when you get off stage, and it happens more here than anywhere else in Florida, not really anywhere else, but you get off stage and people go, oh, I have a business or I have a venue. Let me give you $300. Yeah, as a business, it's hard to take just $300.
Right.
But to a comedian, they go, great, I'll make $150, and I'll bring a feature and an MC. So
it's a little,
it's easier that way because now not only are you eyeing yourself, but you're giving it to 2 other comics. So when you're a booker, comedians act as their own booker. There's very few that aren't their own booker, agent, or manager. Right? It's just the top 150. That have their own booker, manager, and agent. And other than that, you are that for the rest of your life, for your entire career as a comedian.
Yeah. And I would say, so my viewpoint on that running a booking and production company is that it's short-sighted. So you're going to have probably a single annual, at most, transaction with that individual, that let's call them a client. They're going to hire you to do one show, and maybe they'll bring you back next year if they want to do it again. But if you bring in management who then can introduce other opportunities for different shows,
So there is something that you're missing. It
supports the scene in a larger sense.
Is normally, if you're a decent enough comedian and you do well that one year, you'll get that every year. And that's what you want to build up. Just like, Koechner, until he was doing theaters, he's doing the same 50 improvs every year, right? But he's coming up with, I'd say, a decent comedian is using maybe a half hour of the same material in an hour set You're just reapplying it so it sounds different. It comes in and out of other material. So every year you're doing the same show. You want to be. And you want to grow. That's how you grow your fan base in that area. So there is that separation of, if you don't bring the heat that next year, then yeah, you're probably going to lose that gig. But then, as a younger comic, the way I got more gigs was I would look out and see who was booking shows, whether it was a club or independent producer like us, or an agency, and I would say, hey, I work with these headliners. Would you book these headliners? And then when I get the headliners booked, I would also tell them I'm the feature. So I would book myself as the feature,
Right.
Which is basically, it's a great way to get yourself booked, and I need to do it more often.
And get someone else some work.
Yeah. And the more you get those people to work, the more they're like, oh, you hang out with them, become their friends, then they want to hang out with you. The Michael Noce, Crystalia story. You hang out with someone long enough and become their friend, they're going to want to hang out at shows.
Right. And supporting other comedians, supporting all the venues, like you said. If you're on a show, and if you're thirsty or hungry, eat at the venue. Don't stop off and get fast food. So use your dollar much more smartly and make an impact on that venue that's trying to support comedy.
On your off night, go to the shows for other people and be that extra person in the audience in the room.
Yeah.
And be aware of what you're doing. I did a show last week, and it was a great audience for the 4 comics ahead of me, who each did 20 minutes, and I'm closing the show. And when it was time for me to get up, in between when the host was on stage, most of the comics got up and left the room, making it holes in the audience. And then the people who went to the bathroom, and then a couple people, so people just thought, they saw the comics getting up, so they thought, okay, the show's over. So half the place left before I got on stage. And then some of the comics are off on the side talking in the same room.
Distraction.
In the same room.
Yeah.
And then
Not supportive.
in and out of the room the entire time while I was on stage to smoke. So, I have to do crowd work the entire time. I can't do any jokes.
Right.
And then because of the room, every time the door opened, a beep went off. So I had to point that out. And then I said, the next person who comes in, I told the entire audience, and I forgot about this until today, I said, let's do the mannequin challenge. Does everyone here knows the mannequin challenge? And I said, the next person that goes out, that comes in, we do it. So when you hear the beep, everyone freeze. So the entire place did it, which was great. And I just stood in the middle of the room with the microphone, and our friend Minda came in, and she was like, this is really weird. And it was hilarious.
Funny. Right.
But it took so much effort because of everyone else not really thinking of the show. They were like, my set is done. That's it. I'm out of here.
Yeah. Another thought on the supportiveness note, you see a room that needs something that you might have or have access to. Let's say this room doesn't have good lighting on the stage. I have a spotlight in my car. The sound doesn't sound good. I've got a vocal mic in my car. Grab it. Make the show better.
Yeah, I've gotten lots of gigs from having that equipment in my car. I had an audition at a comedy club, and the microphone was rusted through and concave and barely working, and I had a mic in the car, and I went and got it. And was it Grandma from Hell had me open for her for like 2 or 3 weeks because of that. She didn't care what my set was.
So we could go on, and we will for other episodes. The idea of this podcast is to help comedians navigate and become as successful as they want to be in this industry, by kind of pulling the veil away and kind of exposing more about the business side of comedy. Anything that you want to leave with on this episode and this topic?
I'm available for bookings.
Get your plug in.
Nico Prada. It's funny that he was watching. He said I was one of the people at that show, was going in and out of the door and talking and stuff. Yeah,
the Beeping Door Show.
Yeah, he said, "Oh man, I'm cringing hard. That was my bad. Thanks for the lesson. You're welcome." Yeah, it sucks when it happens, and that's the thing is so many comics do not think about it.
Well, and also, if go to the management, they might not be noticing.
So
and if
at
there's
that
a way
show,
to turn it off,
at that show when I walked in, all of the TVs were on. Everyone's watching the comedy, but all the TVs are on.
that's distracting.
So I texted the guy who booked the show, and I said, "Hey, can they turn off the TVs?" Mm-hmm. And he went around and turned the TVs off. So I helped everyone else's set be better.
There you go. Yeah, notice things like that are taking away from the.
So now you should feel really bad about that.
And also, I would say, not on a show night, but one of our performers the other night didn't get a chance to eat at the venue. He went back the next day for lunch. So, like, if you're in the area, support the venue that's supporting comedy.
Yeah. And offer help to the promoters. We have our buddy Robert Schloff came last night. He had his night off.
Oh, that's right.
He could have gone to the Marine Ball if he wanted to, but instead he volunteered and helped us with the show. We are fortunate to have a lot of the students who do that.
Yeah, that's
because
huge.
they're learning in the class.
Yeah, that's a huge way to learn the business side of comedy is to volunteer.
Yeah, and we do have a class. We teach all this stuff in the class, the etiquette and the do's and don'ts. The next free class is December 22nd in Florida.
Yeah, here in Boca. That's about it for today. Thank you for joining us. This first episode number
one. All right.
Where can people find you?
RichyLeis.com, RICHYLEIS. I'll be in Vegas the 20th to the 24th. And then I'll be at El Cid in Silver Lake, Los Angeles on the 27th with Jeff Garland from Curb Your Enthusiasm, Heather Pasternak from Stephen Colbert, Mike Burton from Paul Blart Mall Cop, Ray Goots from Carolines in New York, and Jordana Lilly is a famous musician. And she just started stand-up, and she's going to be our newbie on the show. She's going to come and do a guest spot for Schmooze and Schmile. And then we have December 3rd is Giving Tuesday. We'll be with Glendale Arts.
That's right.
With Drew Lynch, Kira Sultanovich, Mary Basmajian, and Kelly Spillman, and Chris Fairbanks.
What a fun
Crazy show.
Yeah.
And then the 6th, we have stand-up comedy again. With a whole cast of amazing characters. I can't remember who's on that show. And that's at the Silver Lake Dog Cafe, which is a shelter, raises money for the dog shelter. And then the very next night is our all-star show at the Ice House in Pasadena on the 7th. So we got a lot of LA shows coming up.
Yeah.
And we'll be planning, we have some more coming up in late December, mid-December in LA. And then we have some more shows coming here in Florida in December.
And if people want to find you on the Book of Faces, you're on there.
Yeah, Richy Leis, RICHYLEIS.
Instagram.
RICHYLEIS.
And you got TikTok, too.
I do have TikTok, which is...
Same thing?
I think it's Richard Leis.
Thank you again, Richy, for joining us.
Thanks, Ben.
And stay tuned for more episodes. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast and rate it if you like it. If you don't like it, let us know in a private message. And would love to get your feedback, comments when we air this.
And you can email us at bookings@comiccure.com.
No S, just booking@comiccure.com.
For any info. Or if you're a nonprofit or a business that wants to do business.
Yeah, and if you're a comedian, we would love for you to fill out an application on our website. You can go to comiccure.com/comic-sign-up. Where you'll see the application with all the information that we're looking for.
All right. Have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone.